Okay. All right, now, welcome everyone to our third and final episode in the in this workshop, the introduction to digital accessibility workshop. Let's quickly recap what we've learned in the past two sessions. So we talked about the digital accessibility in general. We talked about the different models of defining disabilities. We also talked about some facts regarding the disabilities and the number of disabled people around the world and around all of us. We also discussed that not all of the disabilities are permanent, some temporary and some situational disabilities that all of us face and day-to-day basis. So all of us are disabled at some point of our lives. So that was what we've covered in the first session, and then we moved on to the second one. We talked about the average and how designing for the average is really useful because no one is average. So let's face it. We talked about how to design for inclusion and the principles of inclusive design. So that was quickly what we've covered last two sessions. Today, we will cover web content accessibility guidelines, which are the principles or the guidelines that we implement and test our digital products and services against. And we will talk about some technical stuff. So it's going to be an interesting session. So let's kickstart with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG 2.1 level AA, which we usually just try to comply to. And these guidelines are the principles and the guidelines, the rules that we use when we design and build accessible products. The four principles of WCAG and all of the success criteria, I think, and when we talk about 2.1 level AA, that's 50 success criteria, as far as I can remember. All of these success criteria are under these four principles: that perceivable, that all of the components should be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So we'll talk about one by one. And this is just a really brief example of some success criteria under the perceivable principle. 1.1, which is the text alternatives. This success criteria is all about providing text alternatives for the images and the graphic interface for users that use assistive technologies such as screen readers to navigate the web. We'll talk about all of these in details later, but let's just go through them. And then the second one, 1.2, it's time-based media, like for example, captions for videos and audio descriptions as well. 1.3, adaptable. So these are the sub-principles. Adaptable, that the content needs to be adaptable, like for example the form fields, labels, and headings, and how through the code and through programming, how to convey and communicate the relationship between the components on the same page. The fourth sub-principle is distinguishable. Hi, Romana. Distinguishable. So the content needs to be distinguishable, not relying on the color alone. And when we use color, we need to think about how this color contrasts between how this component using this color contrasts with the background. Let's talk about some example guideline. Like for example, 1.1.1, this success criteria is all about non-text content. So all non-text content that is presented to the user should have a text alternative that serves the equivalent purpose. For example, this image here, it represents a digestive chocolate biscuit. This information needs to be communicated to screen readers and assistive technology users in the alt attribute here. So when you use the image tag to implement this image in a web page, we need to provide a suitable and understandable alt attribute with alternative text that represent the image itself. This is really important to some users that rely on assistive technology to navigate the web. Another example is in the perceivable principle, the use of color, which is the success criteria number 1.4.1. Like, for example, here on the left-hand side, this chart is presented. So all of these lines are presented using color alone. Think about it, that here's the yellow and green and red lines. So we all can see them. And on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, they use the same information represented on the graph, but there is something additional, which is the shapes integrated with the lines. Like, for example, when we talk about the chocolate digestive, which is represented by the yellow line here and yellow line here, on the right-hand side chart, it's represented with a yellow line as well as the circles, and the same with custard cream, rich tea. All of them have unique shapes to represent them. Think about it without seeing the color. Which one will be more accessible? I think here's a good example. So without seeing a color, all of the three lines here are similar. So you will never be able to differentiate which is the HT and how the HT perform throughout the year, but throughout years. But here it is really obvious. So this is the custard cream, and here is how the sales for this, for example, this is the sales. The sales for the custard cream goes throughout the years, and how the HT perform and how the chocolate perform. The chocolate digestive perform. So this is, I think that was a really good example just for you to empathize and think about users that cannot see the colors and cannot differentiate element based on the colors alone. That's another success criteria with another example. Like, for this success criteria is called color contrast with number 1.4.3. On the right-hand side, we can see this table. So all of these text elements have different colors and different background colors. What we can see that this element here is really hard to distinguish and really hard to perceive the content inside it, as well as, I think, from my opinion, these two elements, right? WCAG answers this. So, for example, when we talk about the regular text, which is not bold, not really large text, WCAG requires a minimum of color contrast between the element and its background of 4.5 to 1. There are so many different tools to test the colors, the color contrast. So all online, you can just pick the color of the text and the color of the background and see the difference between them and how they contrast with each other. So we are more reliant on higher contrast as we age. That's one fact. As we age, we need we lose our size, and we always need to get and to perceive the content with a really higher contrast. Bright lights and sunlight make it more difficult to read low contrast text. So this is a fact as well. Imagine this text in a sun glare and or outside, it will be really hard to perceive when you try to read it out. Some people may be unable to distinguish certain color combinations. Like, for example, people with color blindness, they cannot see the so many different of disabilities when we talk about colorblind, but the most common one is people cannot differentiate the red and green colors. So when we focus on implement or maintain a good color contrast between the text and its background, we make sure that all of our users will be able to perceive this information without seeing the color, or with low sides, with the good color contrast between the text and its background. Okay, we'll move forward with the heading structure 1.3.1. That's under the success criteria called info and relationship. So it's basically it's talking about the relationship between the elements and each other. So one of the big elements under this success criteria is the heading structure. So we need to maintain a good heading structure that reflects the content on the page based on the importance, and the subheadings means that this content is a sub-content to the other one. So like for example on the gov.uk, this is the heading map of this page, for example. So we can see that H1, this is the H1, and this is the main heading on this page, correct? We can find some other subheadings at level 2. So without thinking about it, we are sure that all of this content is under this one. So this is how you reflect the relationship between the element and each other, and how you reflect the structure of the page, so that users who cannot see the page, they can imagine how the content of the page is structured and implemented using the code. Typical issues. So we at some point, some slides and with some success criteria, we'll talk about some common issues or typical issues, like formatted headings not marked up as a heading semantics. Lots of developers just implementing this using dev and CSS and make it bold and big using the CSS without relying on the heading semantics, such as H1, 2, 3, up to 4, up to 6. Another issue is headings used for styling. Like for example, that's not, let's imagine it, that this is not a heading, but we would like to make it big and bold. So we use the heading style. So it's the other way around. Another issue, skipped heading levels, like when you jump from 1 to 4. That reflects and not so good heading structure across the page. And we implement, when we implement a web page without any headings. So that's really, not useful to people who rely on assistive technologies to navigate the page, because this way the whole page is not structured for them. So they will not be able to differentiate which is the main content, which is the most important content within the page, which is the non-related content that I will not be bothered of. So these are some common issues when we talk about heading structure. Another success criteria when we talk about the perceivable, please everyone, if you have any question, just stop me. When we talk about the perceivable principle, which is captions 1.2.2, this is how you provide captions to video. Like this one is burden. Like let's see this example.
The sound in a video, film, or TV program can present barriers for people with impaired hearing, such as Susan or Lars. To illustrate this, how well can you follow what's happening in this clip when we remove the sound? Like Susan or Lars, you can understand much more when captions are provided. Susan and Lars can get by with captions, but some deaf people who know sign language may prefer on-screen signing, but this is not always readily available. Captions, or subtitles for deaf and hard of hearing people, as they're called in some countries, provide text information on the screen that can show what people are saying, explain which character is speaking, as well as describing background noise, such as a telephone ringing, dog barking, or children playing. The picture in a video or TV program can present barriers for people with impaired vision, such as Carol or Maria.
Okay, as we can see in this video, so the whole of the video just continues to talk about the closed caption and how to implement it, and the types of information that you need to include in the caption, like the speaker, the background noises, and all of the any important information that are represented within the video. But it was a really good example to have an inclusive video that is available to everyone, like for both the people with hearing disabilities and people that cannot see the visuals really efficiently. So this way, the caption is there in text, and the sign language presenter is presenting what is being said and being done within the video. So that was a good example of inaccessible and accessible video using the caption, and how important is it to some users. Automatic captions are improving. Yes, that's right. So in some platforms like YouTube, with live videos, you can just enable the live caption, and with some other videos you can just create the automatic caption. So you are not, as a content author or the provider of the video, you are not obliged to provide the caption yourself. YouTube becomes really smart to exclude what is being said in the video and translate it into a written caption to be presented within the video itself. All right, so let's move on to the next principle of WCAG, that the content needs to be operable. For example, 2.1, keyboard accessible. All content can be accessed without a mouse. So this is one really big principle that we need to think of when we use when we build a digital product. And here is an exercise that you need just to implement, to do it yourself. Anyone who can see this video, go to any website, just name any website, and try to navigate through this website and its content using only the keyboard, and see what is the result. Specifically for websites and websites and digital solutions in the in the Arab countries, please guys, just do this and see how bad we are when it comes to the accessibility. So it's really important and crucial. Sorry?
If I can mention about how hard it is even for our talks. So
right, yeah.
We're trying, well, I've been trying to put our talks on YouTube and make sure that they're translated to Arabic. So we're supporting the Arabic users to understand and have more awareness of accessibility. And it's been so difficult.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I can relate. Yeah, it was really bad. It is really bad, honestly. So yeah. So navigating the web with a keyboard is a crucial need for so many users who cannot use the mouse, which are a really big number of users with tremors and other disabilities in their hands. In addition to some users who are preferring to use the keyboard, like myself. So I don't use them. I barely use the mouse unless I'm navigating an Arab website. So it's really bad for me. So that's one principle. The other principle is to provide the user with enough time. So enough time, users are warned if they are about to be logged out. So when we use any product that has some security and the session needs to be timed out within a limited time, like in the banking sector, in the governmental sector. Yes, it is their right, the owner of the website, it's their right to end the session within a specific amount of time, specifically with inactive users. But you need to give the user enough time to finish their task, because some users are struggling with the content. They require more time to finish the task, and other users are not be able to perform the task within specific time. So give the user the ability to extend their sessions on your website or application. So that's one thing. The third operable principle, which is seizures and physical reactions. Like, for example, make sure that your content will not cause any seizures to the users. Like one really common example of this is to have your content flashing. So this flashing is really harmful for some users with some seizures and physical reactions to visuals. The final principle under the operable big principle is navigable. So make sure that your users are aware of their location on the web page. Like, for example, when that's to complete the first example, or the first challenge that we offered, which is using a keyboard to navigate a website. Even if all of the content of this website is can be activated using the keyboard and can be interacted with using the keyboard, but this content most probably will have no focus indicator, so you will not be able to see or to know where are you on this page. So make sure that the focus indicator is visible and with good color contrast between it and its background. Let's talk about some examples. So with WCAG 2.1.1, all functionality of the content is operable through a keyboard interface. So this is the one that I just mentioned, or this is the challenge, that all of the interactive elements need to be available for keyboard only users who cannot use the mouse, and they just can use keystrokes to navigate your page without requiring specific timings for individual keystrokes, except where the underlying function require input that depends on the path of the user's movement and not just the endpoints. For example, I'll give an example of this. With carousels, so when you have some slides on the page, and some mobile devices, you will not be able to navigate through these elements without dragging the page horizontally. So with users who can just rely on a single pointer assistive technology, like the handsets to navigate the page, they cannot use their hands, they cannot use even their voice to navigate through the page. They can just or only use a headset to navigate through the page. These devices require a single pointer to navigate the elements. So in this case, it's really simple. Provide a next and previous buttons underneath these slides for these users to be able to navigate the content without relying on the past gesture or multi-point gesture to navigate the content. So first of all, make sure that all of your content is accessible using the keyboard. All of the interactive components need to be focusable and be able to be activated using the keyboard only, and make sure that any content that needs or require any multi or path gesture to be activated. I just gave an example of a carousel using the dragging left and right horizontally to be able to navigate to the next page or the next slide. Make sure that there are some single pointer elements to do the same functionality, such as a next and previous button. Well, when we talk about keyboard, so it's the typical navigation of the elements on or of the interactive elements on the page is you can move through the interactive elements using the tab key, moving backwards using shift tab, activate a button using space or enter key, activate a link using the enter key, scroll the page using the up and down arrows, move through selection lists and menus using the up and down arrows or tab key. So these are the basic and classic interaction using the keyboard. And this is here for your reference, just to make sure that all of your content is compatible with the keyboard. Just for you to be able to test this, these are the keys that you need to use in order to test your content against the keyboard. Well, sorry, go on.
If you go back a slide, so in terms of keyboard only techniques and testing for whether my website, for example, did work okay, is this something, what would you recommend? How would I test? Would it be before launch? Would it be before that? Would I be testing every page? How would that work?
Okay, so the thanks for your question. Firstly, it's a really good question. So when we talk about the keyboard operability, it's really important to make sure that all of your content is compatible with the keyboard. So in this case, use these instructions to navigate through the content and try to activate all of the interactive elements. And yes, I would recommend testing every page. But if you have built a design system for your product, just ask your developers to create a sample page with all of the interactive elements that they use, and tab through them, try to activate them, navigate through the lists and menus using the arrow keys, and make sure that everything is navigable and operable using the keyboard. So I would recommend to make sure that all of the content of your product is accessible using the keyboard only, which is really, it's a really crucial one. It's, we cannot accept any release with any component that is not focusable, firstly, or cannot be navigated, cannot be activated using only the keyboard. So this is our technique.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, when you talk about the content, and this is another principle, another main principle of WCAG, that the content needs to be understandable. So the first sub principle, that the content needs to be readable. Define language of content, but not reading level. So we'll talk about this later. Predictable, consistent navigation and consistent identification. We'll talk about this as well. input assistance, error messages on forms are accessible to all. So I'll give an example for language of page, which is WCAG 3.1.1.1. The default human language of each web page can be programmatically determined. For example, the first page, it's provided in Cyprus, I think. So that's the language for, I cannot remember the country, but it is another language than the English language. And the other page is using the English language. What is that? And why is it important for users? Because assistive technologies rely on this attribute just to adapt its language. Like, for example, if this language is AR and the value inside this language is AR, your screen reader will start to navigate through the content and announce all of the content, read out all of the content that within this page in Arabic. When the screen reader of yours doesn't have the Arabic language pack, like for example, you didn't download the Arabic for it, and when they find the language that is the language attribute is in English, but the content is in Arabic, they will not announce or read out any of this content, and vice versa. So this is why it is really important to have the page with the language of the content correctly, and this needs to be programmatically identified or determined on the HTML tag. So this is the language of page. There are some exemptions in this, but when we talk about the inner contents of the page, there is another success criteria for it, which is language of parts. So let's talk about this example. This is an image for a croissant, which is basically it is a French word, but you cannot translate this. So there is no way to translate this this name to English. It has to be there in French, and it has to be read out in French. So in this case, you just provide the whole content. I would identify the whole content that it is provided in English using the lang equals en on the HTML tag, and then on the container of this element or of the word croissant, you need to identify this part of page with the different language. Like for example, you identify this span that contains this word croissant with lang equal fr, which stands for French. Okay, so when we talk about the principle of this or the underlying principle of this success criteria, the human language of each passage or phrase in the content can be programmatically determined except for proper names, technical terms, words of intermediate language, and words or phrases that have become part of the vernacular of the immediately surrounding text, like this one. So that's the simple definition of this success criteria, that when we have the whole page in one language and we have some parts in other languages and this content should not be translated to English, for example, we need to identify the language for this one so that screen readers will not, or assistive technologies do not struggle with this content, and you can have all of the content read out without any, missing information. When we talk about understandable, everything needs to be predictable and consistent. Like for example, the two icons on the left-hand side, the first two ones, the magnified glass and the magnified glass with plus inside it. Which one is search and which one is zoom?
Search would be the left one.
The left one is search and the right one is zoom. Yeah. Okay. That's right. But why is that? Because we get used to this. right? You cannot just, you know, mix them, and you cannot just use the one on the right hand side for search, because users will, you know, this element will be predicted as it is a zoom, or it will do a zoom, not a search. So this is how it is really important for designers to pick the right icons for, or the right graphics for their products. Same with the next one, which is 2 arrows. One is back and one is undo, and we get also used to this. So this is really needs to be considered by designers when they implement a web page or a mobile app. Okay, let's talk about some examples. 3.3.1, if an input error, which is error identification, this is the name of this success criteria. If an input error is automatically detected, the item that is in error is identified and the error is described to the user in text. This is really broad, but let's talk about that. We're having a like this one. We are having this, you know, error here that the user needs to enter all of this content. So this way, when we have an error to be added to the page, this is really obvious for users who can see the page, but with other users who cannot see the content, they will not be aware of the the presence of this error. So once this error is provided to the page, it needs to be read out to assistive technology users, and it is really important to notify the user that there is an error and you need to modify this your entry to avoid this error. So that's one thing. Another common failure here, let's talk about them in turn. No indication of required field. Like, for example, the users gets surprised that some fields are required, while some fields in another product are identified with an asterisk, for example, or a word required or optional for the optional fields, so that the user will understand that the ones that are not identified as required as optional are required. So this is one big common failure. Error indicated only by color, like this example here and this example here. When there is an error, the color of the label gets changed to red, for example. This is a really common failure because users will not be able to identify this. Additionally, this is not reflecting what happened and what went wrong. Like, for example, when I asked them which is your favorite city park, and there was a do not choose any of the available options, and you mark this with red, there's nothing here. So it's different to when I say you need to select one of these options. This is how to describe an error in text. It is really important to do this. The next one, error messages do not provide enough support. Like, for example, when we see some error messages, such as invalid data. All right, and what should I do now? So provide more information about what went wrong and how to remediate this error. Like, for example, invalid email address. Please provide an email address with the approved format, xx@example.com. So this is a good screen reader that gives the user some guidance on how to remediate or fix the error. The next one is error messages are not linked to the fields they refer to. And this is specifically for people who use screen readers to navigate the page. They will struggle when they land on this field, for example, and there is an error associated to this field without any mentioning or hinting this error message, because some users navigate the page using shortcuts, so they just land on the input field, for example. And when this input field is in error, these users who navigate through the page using shortcuts will not be able to land on this error and read it out. So in this case, you need to associate each invalid input field with the corresponding error message.
Ahmed, I have a question.
Sure.
In terms of errors, and I think also it's part of one of the WCAG guidelines, I'm not sure which one, is the grouping of radio buttons or elements per question. So let's say the last box, you sort of can group the name with its radio buttons and the text field, right, as one group. So when you refer to it, it goes back to that area. Am I right? Or
you're right, but it's not directly related to the errors. It's directly related to the info and relationship. So you need to group all related input fields together in a field set with a legend, just to make sure that this legend, like for example, when we land on this Mr. radio button, it will read out as Mr. But when you group these together and make the name as the, I'm giving just a random example, make the name as the group label for these two radio buttons, when the screen reader lands on this, it will read out name Mr. and here name Mrs. So this grouping is really important just to make sense of the content. And when you're right, when there's an error happens on the page, you will refer to the whole group, not a specific element within this group. So, and the error message will refer to this group. So yes, you're right, but it's more directly to the relationship between the elements, then how to provide an error message for this group, or for this chunk of related input fields, not just only a single one within this group.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, here is a good example and a bad example. No, they are both good. So username. So you enter the username and you would like to give the user feedback that they have entered a good username. You just turn everything in green, which is not fine on its own without this icon. So this icon solves the problem. It gives the user some indication about the status of this element, but not relying on just the color. So the user who can see the color and who cannot see the color and the difference in the colors are aware that this username is correct because of this check icon. While the next one, error, expiry date, you entered an error, and then there is an error happened here, which is use the format MMYYYY. So this is what happened. And this is a good example of an error message. Users who cannot see the color, they can see the text here, which is use the format MMYYYY. So this is how the user who cannot see the color will see this error, which is a good thing. The other good thing is that you tell the user what exactly to do to remediate this error. Ultimately, this error message is programmatically associated with this input field using something called error described by, referring to the ID of this element, which is really good for screen readers. When they land on this input field, it will read out error expiry date 3.2015. Use the format MMYYYY without going to this element. So it will all be grouped here when the screen reader lands on this input field. Okay, the final big or main principle of WCAG is the content needs to be robust. And how to do this to ensure that the accessibility information is correct and can be communicated programmatically to the user. So this is mainly for assistive technologies and how to make the content perform, or how to make sure that the content performs well with with all of the assistive technologies. One of some success criteria related to this is parsing name role value and status messages. Let's talk about the name role value one. So, for example, the name is representing what is it for. So what is this input field for? What is this interactive element is for? What can it do is the role. So this is what is the nature of this element. So whether it is a link, so I would expect to navigate to another page, or is it a button that perform an action within this page, or whether is it a radio button to select, or a checkbox to select multiple of them, what it is. So this is the role. And then what is the current state? So for example, some elements like checkbox, it's whether the information of whether is the checkbox is checked or unchecked is important for me. Like, let's say I cannot see the screen and I'm landing on a, like, for example, I agree on the terms and conditions, checkbox, not checked. So I know that this agreement has not been yet done. But when it says that checked, I'm aware that the agreement is done. But when it doesn't say anything, so I agree on the terms and conditions, checkbox, sorry, not checkbox, I agree on terms and conditions, and that's it. So what should I do now? Whether to activate it or not, I cannot see the screen. So a good example here for the name role value is this checkbox. The name of this checkbox needs to be matching the visual label here. So it has to be suitable for vegetarians, which is the visual label. The role is a checkbox. So now I understand that it can be checked or unchecked. The state is checked. So if I ask a question, what is the name role value of this one? Can anyone just answer me? Or this one, because it's easier to be read out. I will answer it, no worries. So the name role value of this checkbox needs to be, the name is milk-free, the role is checkbox, the state is checked. Okay, what about this one? Which is visually indicating that it is dimmed or inoperable. So I would reckon that the name should be not suitable for nuts allergy. The role is checkbox as well, because it is a checkbox. The state, whether checked or unchecked, I think it's disabled. So now I know that this element, without seeing it, is disabled, and I cannot be able to, I'm not able to operate it. So this is when we talk about the name role value and how robust the content should be in front of assistive technologies. Most common accessibility issues when we talk about general accessibility issues is, like, for example, insufficient color contrast or use of color for meaning. So insufficient color contrast, and as I explained up there, only relying on color to communicate some important information. The other one, missing alternative text on images. So most of developers just implement the image and provide the source, and that's it, close the tag. There is no alternative text, which is really, really bad, because when screen reader or an assistive technology land on this image, it will read out the whole path of the image. So imagine that you are navigating an e-commerce website, and suddenly, after a good heading, like for example, our products, you land on something called http /biscuit.org.uk/images/029 and all of this. So it's really frustrating for so many users. And the third one is lack of keyboard access, which I challenge every one of you is to try themselves when open any Arab-based website, unfortunately, and navigate through the page using only a keyboard, you will see the suffer and how bad it is when people who cannot use the mouse are facing every single day of their lives trying to access the web using their keyboard. Missing focus indicator. This is related to the previous one, that even if the content is operable using the keyboard, you cannot see the focus indicator. You cannot relate where the or just gets where the focus is on the page, whether is it on the footer or on the header or on the button that I need to activate. Missing form fields label and inaccessible error messages, as I just mentioned, the name role value and the association between the visual labels and the input fields. When you land on something and it's called text field, okay, thank you, what should I do now? Whether it's a name, address, what it is. So what should I do with this? You need to provide more information. You need to provide accessible error messages to all the users just to be able to navigate the content and be able to fix the problems that they do when entering incorrect data. The next one, incorrect heading structure. As I mentioned at the beginning of this session, the heading structure is really important to orientate the user. So users need it to orientate through across the page or within the page to know whether this is a good the main content or not. Is it related to the previous paragraph or not? So all of these questions could be answered using a good heading structure. No captions, transcripts or audio descriptions on videos. So in the video I played when we talked about the captions, it was really obvious how bad it is for users who cannot hear navigating or watching a video without a caption. So it's really crucial for them to know what's happening on the screen without hearing the voices. So if anyone has any question, please just let me know. Sorry. Because I'm moving forward to another section, which is, we finished talking about WCAG now, but it's a really quick one. How do you make accessible products and services? So,
a lot of questions when it comes to the technical side, but I'm going to leave all of my questions to our training, hopefully, when we do one,
yeah.
Because it's really crucial that we get this going. But I think, as myself a user of a lot of forms online, and I do use a keyboard, I really feel we have a long way to go to fix submission of forms and errors. It's really difficult for me as a sighted user, so let alone somebody that has trouble with cognitive disability or any other kind of disability.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I totally agree, specifically with the keyboard operability, because lots of people rely on the keyboard. I'm one of them, and so many other users who only rely on the keyboard to navigate the content. When the content is not operable or focusable using the keyboard, it's really frustrating, and they literally just abandon the website. So it's really crucial for everyone to be able to navigate the website using the keyboard. All right, talking about the accessibility is a journey, not a destination. So this is a really big or really important principle that we need to have in mind when we talk about accessibility inside an organization, because some people, some clients, I face this myself. They think about it as I'm stepping in just to provide a tool, and I'm leaving, and that's it. No, I'm sorry, it's not correct. Accessibility is a journey. It's not a destination. You will always be trying to be accessible. All of your content needs to be accessible all the time. All of the updates, all of the new releases and new features, everything needs to be accessible. And accessibility, embedding accessibility in your software development lifecycle. I'm here specifically talking about the digital accessibility. I'm talking about the the built environment or the physical accessibility. I'm talking about the digital accessibility. And building accessibility requires policies, processes, and quality assurance. So everything needs to be done properly. Has design, content, recruitment, and technical implications. All of the teams will be involved to provide them an accessible product or service. Will involve staff from across the organizations. All of the teams, the managers, all of the decision makers needs to be involved, needs to understand the value of the accessibility, the business case for the accessibility within the organization, and how to implement it, and how to find a policy that force the development teams not to provide an inaccessible product by time. So, of course, everything takes time, and it's a journey, as we just mentioned. So we need to understand this. So many people within the organization are responsible for the digital accessibility, like managers, project managers, product managers, designers, content creators, content authors, developers, tester and quality assurance team, recruitment, senior management. So all of these people and all of these titles are responsible for the digital accessibility. And usually there are 5 stages, and I've seen this myself. So the first one is denial. Everyone think that it's not important. No one complains, and no one using assistive technology to access my website. So this claim is really common, and unfortunately, it's really wrong. And then when the client when organizations or the decision makers in the organizations, they learn a little more about accessibility, they start to be angry. It's not my problem. Don't tell me how to do my job. I'm the best in this field. I'm the best in this industry. Don't teach me. Don't preach me, telling me how to do my job. The next stage is and of course, moving from a stage to another requires more awareness and more information to be shared with the decision makers. The next stage is bargaining. Well, I can do a hack without having to do this properly. The most common hack is to have an accessibility toolbar at the top of the page. So that's really unuseful and inaccessible itself to have a toolbar telling the user, if you have a disability, come here, I will serve you. No, sorry, people with disability have their own preferences, and they have their own assistive technology to rely on, not the one that you're offering them. You need to work on your content, not to provide a hack. Then the next stage, with more information and more awareness, is depression. All right, you expect me to do all these requirements? It's really, a big task to my organization to just drop off, just to start everything from the beginning to maintain this accessibility. Yes, I understand this situation. Yes, I understand how important is it, but it's not, it's really big task. And then with more awareness, more information, the acceptance. All right, we see what needs to be done, and we are working on a strategy. Let's do this together. So this is what, what typical, organizations or inaccessible organizations go through when they have the decision to become accessible. And it's really, typical. And we've seen all of us have seen this before. Now, time for questions, if you have any, because I think that's everything from my side.
Thank you, Ahmed, for that. It was very enlightening, and I think you touched on really good points, and there'd be a lot of questions. I'm going to stop the recording in case anybody in the room wants to have a question offline.
Sure.
I appreciate it.